Hey y'all, today we are working on the Grom and finally we are doing handlebars. So this might be a long one, might be shot a little out of order, but hopefully it'll be followable. We'll see. Let's get going. So here's what we're using today. Main thing is a ProTaper KLX110 bend, 7/8 bar. I did take the handlebar pad off, kind of like the look of it without it. I'm not reusing the throttle tube. I got one from MNNTHBX, which is a Motion Pro throttle tube in their own box. And then a pair of Motion Pro Road Control Street Grips. That should be all the parts I'm using, but as far as tools go, painter's tape to help mark the nub where we need to drill for the control pods, center punch. I use the backside of a broken X-Acto knife to get the covers off on the bolts on the the clamp, handlebar clamp. 8mm for the lever perches. 5mm if you want to remove the bar pad, the other side of those, and then a 6mm for the actual fork bolts, the mounting bolts. And then number 2 JIS, if you are reusing the throttle tube and grips from your old one, you will also need a number 3 to get the bar end weight off, so you can slide that off. And then a bandsaw, because I am going to cut, not a bandsaw, a hacksaw, because I am going to cut the bars down, and then I actually 3D printed a little vice mount, soft jaws kind of thing, just to keep my cut straight. And then one other thing I forgot is we do need a wrench to adjust the throttle cable as well, so that we can get the one out of there. Believe that's all. If I have anything to add, I'll interject myself right here. Told you I'd forget something. 8mm and 10mm box end wrenches, a deburring tool, which put around the inside of cuts and it gets rid of the sharp spots, and a 3/16 inch drill bit and a drill to go along with it. All right, first step I'm going to do is actually cut the bars. I just pulled the bar end plug out of here so I don't mar that up, and then I'm going to cut it at this 3 mark. These bars are much wider than the stock Grom bars, and I don't actually want them that wide, so I'm going to cut it at this 3. It should end up removing about 1.5 inches overall, or about 3/4 of an inch on each side from the overall width. So just going to use a hacksaw, and then this little guide's going to help me keep it square, so hopefully it doesn't look like crap. Haha, victory. Okay. We have this. As I break my little clamp, perfect. We are all cut. Nice. Bars are done, nice and clean. One tool I didn't mention earlier is a little deburring tool. Run that around the inside a few times, and it'll get rid of that entire sharp edge. But then I also just sanded it flat and smooth to make it nice and pretty. Before I do a full install on it, I'll probably end up, oh god, that's a lot taller on the rear stand. I'll probably end up just flat black, spray paint that. Yeah, so we are, I don't know how well you're going to be able to see this. We are about 1 inch, maybe 1.5 inches wider on either side of the handlebar right now. And again, this KLX bend is slightly shorter than the stock Grom bend. I would say maybe about another 1.5 inches shorter. So something to keep in mind if you're planning on doing this. Also something to keep in mind, if you have another way, let me find a nice perch here. If you have another way of cutting aluminum cleanly and at a nice neat angle, probably do that. It was not fun cutting that with a hacksaw. The 3D printed jig I had worked really well, which I swear to God, I use that 3D printer in everything I do as far as motorcycle builds go now, which started out as a pandemic hobby when we first went work from home, needed something to do throughout the day. Bought a 3D printer. Anyways, ramble aside. What I'm going to do next is go through and remove everything off of the stock bars, and I'll give you all some close-ups of that. So what do we need to remove? Well, everything. Let's start over here and work our way over. So 2 screws on the back of here. Those are number 2 JIS. 2 8mm heads right here, and that'll all come off. To undo this little zip tie doodad, which there's a little flap back here that if you lift, it just undoes itself, which is great. These up here have little covers on them, and this is what I used the back side of an X-Acto knife for. Yep, there we go. Careful not to cut yourself. And that's a 6mm hex right there. Don't lose those little covers. And then another zip tie doodad, 8mm, and then 2 number 2 JIS bolts on the bottom. Forgot one step though. Before we do all this, we need to loosen up our throttle cable so we can remove it from the throttle tube. If you are reusing your throttle tube, you don't need to do that. You can just pull off this end cap here, whole thing slides off, and you can slide it onto the new bars. Okay, so what do I mean when I say we need to undo our throttle cables? So your 2 cables connect inside right here and right here in a push-pull configuration. And those come down all the way down here to your throttle body. Let's see, I undid this bolt a minute ago, so this is just a little cover. Don't lose things. Magnetic park trays are awesome. And this is where it connects. So there are 2 nuts, one on top here and this one right here, that we need to loosen, and then we should have enough play at the top here that we can slide this out through the back side over on this side. So I ended up disconnecting here, so that loops around, goes in like that, which then gave me enough slack to get this upper one out first and then rotate the handle and get this lower one. Little pro tip, if you can get one of your wrenches or one of the mouths of your wrench underneath, you can kind of use that to pull the cable along and not hurt your fingies as much. I should probably just leave the bike like this, right? Get that cafe racer, but I'm just kidding. I'm not going to do that. It does remind me though of other cafe racers where they just flip the handlebars over and remount everything. Yeah, we're not doing that. That was the chair, I promise. Okay, for the most part, everything is now swapped over and is very loose all around. Clamps are loose enough that I can rotate the bars if I need to. These are loose so I can scoot them around, and I don't even have the screws in the pods yet. One thing I didn't show you is I put the grips on the throttle tube and on the dead side, and I just used Windex knockoff. It works great. Cover the bars, slide it on. Make sure you try not to get it on your hands or on the grips, because then your hands and the grips are just slippery, but it dries and then it is no longer slippery. So I've used that every time I've redone bars or throttles or whatever. What I want to do now is get my new throttle tube reattached. One thing to keep in mind when you're putting that grip on, you need to leave a space there. Otherwise it'll bind up against this plastic housing and your throttle will turn very rough and won't return. The Motion Pro grips that I got from, or throttle tube that I got from MNNTHBX has a end plate in it, and I'm not going to be using that, so there's a really easy way to get that out, and it's out. But it is handy for installation if you leave that on there. So a little pro tip there. All right, so I'm going to get this reattached. Let's see, we'll do bottom one first, and my apologies since you probably can't see what I'm doing, but it is small and fiddly anyway. Then we'll do the top one, and then we will Oh man, that's supposed to go on top of the brake lever. Don't be like me. Do it the right way. Right? Is it supposed to be on top of the brake lever? Okay, I need to check. Confirmed, it is supposed to be on top of the brake lever. Okay, not going crazy. Alright, so slide it in there, make sure your cable is in the channel. Otherwise that's no good and it'll jam up on you. Great. And this is where throttle cables get fiddly and a pain. Cool. We'll put both halves back together a little bit. And there's so much going on in this switch pod that it is hard to get it all at once. It helps if you tighten that cable that you loosened back up to get some of the slack out of there so your throttle tube sits appropriately. Okay, well I'm gonna fight with that off camera. One thing I wanted to talk about though is the nub. I alluded to this earlier with the parts and the painter's tape and whatever, but both sides of the bar have these holes in them. These holes line up on the switch pods with, well, a nub. There's a little one here and then there's one on the back side of that one as well. What I need to do is figure out how I want these rotated, what angle, whatever. Once I do that, well, first, sorry, let me go back a second. First thing I need to do is figure out my distance that I need the pods in. Once I have that figured out, I'll actually wrap the bars in blue tape where the pod is, and then I will start to tighten the pod on where I want it. What I hopefully should see is a little mark in the painter's tape where I need to drill my hole. So I'm gonna do that and we'll see how it goes. This is gonna be hard to get you in here to see, but we're gonna try. Okay, so I'm gonna put the painter's tape on the back, like so. Put my pod back on, kind of how I want it. And this one's finicky. You have to put the turn signal switch in first, and then you can get it. Okay. I kind of want it right. Go right about there. I'm just gonna squeeze it and see if that left a mark. I actually learned all this from Jake the Garden Snake. Good YouTuber to watch. He was doing something on one of his bikes and gave that tip. Cool. The alternative to doing this, you could just grind off this nub if you really wanted to, but your whole pod could rotate then. That hole in the back is what locates it. So I don't recommend that. That's not how I roll. But if you want to, I can't stop you. Rotated the handlebars so you can see it a little bit better and laid them flat. So this is my mark right here. Just gonna center punch that a few times. Overkill there. And then peel that off. We have our mark. Cool. So I'm gonna drill that out. It's a 3/16 inch drill bit. I am pretty sure that's the number I remember seeing when I pulled it out. Guess we'll find out. But that should be that. Yes, 3/16. If I were doing this even more proper, I would pull it out and chuck it up in the drill press I have. Gonna spray the bit down a little bit. A little bit of lube. Oh god, all over the bike. That's what I was trying to avoid. That's all right. Woohoo. Just gonna get a little extra ream there. And a little deburring tool because it's my favorite. Very satisfying to use, I'm just saying. Cool, and then we will hook the pod back up. Alright, 2 screws on the back in. My 2 bolts on the mirror are back in, and I am all set. I like my controls, well, angled down quite a bit, as you can kind of see. You can use this flat as a reference if you want to try and align both pods the same. But I like my controls down. Cool, I'm gonna do the other side, which might be a little bit more difficult, but we will connect after that. When you're spacing out everything, if you do plan on going to a clamp on bar end, don't forget to take that into account. Ooh, ah, ooh, ah, wow, 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 so good. Ooh, wow, look at that. That's a view, I guess. Everything is button back up. Ooh, just kidding. Put those back on. Ooh. Everything is put back together now, and I am done for the day. A few notes I would end on. All these little clamp spots, both sides, so top and bottom here, front, back here, should be the same gap. So that's one thing to keep in mind when you're doing this, is you don't run one all the way tight and then run the other one tight. You do them each individually a little at a time and try and get those gaps top and bottom as even as you can. Some other things, don't forget, since I changed throttle tube, I want to make sure that I still have some free play in the throttle, and that's adjusted down below at the throttle body. Don't forget to tighten that back up, put that cover back on. Pay attention to the routing of your throttle cable in your brake line here. If you're messing around and you move it around a weird spot, you could end up pinching a line, and I actually ended up, when I had it full lock to the right, was pinching one of the throttle cables. So not a situation where you're turning hard right and the throttle gets stuck. You don't want that. So otherwise, I think the whole thing went pretty smoothly. I really like how it looks. I was a little concerned with the bars being lower that I wasn't going to like it a whole lot, but it actually feels a little bit more aggressive. And I mean, I haven't ridden it yet because we've still had snow today. Hooray. But I do plan on trying to get it out and see how I like it or not. Fun note though, I did realize that the Grom bars are black, and I think I actually might put them on the CT90 back there eventually. If you're interested in seeing more on the CT90, let me know. That's kind of been I haven't really touched it since last summer, to be honest. So that's a future project. If you wanted to see it, maybe I prioritize it. But hopefully next week I should have the very last part I need to do the forks on this, or I may actually take a break on the Grom and work on the F800. I had a Recluse in there and it kind of grenaded its clutch disc. So I have a backup clutch up there. I'm waiting on a few gaskets and an oil strainer because that's going to be quite a lot of work. It's going to be something. So that's it for today. I'm very pleased with how this turned out, and we'll see you next time.